Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our deep dive into the Michael F. Price College of Business at the University of Oklahoma. We have with our guest today the dean of the school, Corey Phelps. Corey became dean in July of 2020. He had been an associate dean at McGill University's School of Management before that. He's taught at HEC Paris as well as the University of Washington's Foster College of Business. He earned his PhD at NYU Stern, and he has both an MBA and a bachelor's from San Diego State University. Corey, welcome.
Well, thank you, John. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to see you and have you on. Now, give us an overview of the school and tell us basically how it's going.
All right. So Price College right now is, in terms of enrollment, about 5,800 students. So we have at the undergraduate program, that's our largest program. It's about 4,800 students. We have about 1,000 graduate students. Undergraduate, we've got 12 majors. We've got almost 10 graduate programs right now. Most of those are online. So we've been moving increasingly into the online world for our graduate programs. We're a fast-growing college. In fact, we're the fastest-growing college at the University of Oklahoma. We're now the second largest college at OU behind arts and sciences. So growth is certainly something that's on our mind, both on the in-person side as well as on the online side. How things are going? I think things are going very, very well. If growth is an indication of how things are going in terms of students choosing us, then that's always a nice indicator. We launched a strategic plan about 2 years ago now. So what that means is we have a very clear strategic direction, and we can, if you want to, we can get into great deal in terms of how things are going relative to executing on that strategic plan. But suffice it to say, we've made a lot of sufficient progress on the plan, so we're quite happy with where we are right now.
Now, I know you've grown by more than 60% in the past decade and nearly 25% in the last 3 years alone. What do you attribute the growth to?
Well, I think it's a combination of a few things. So if we talk about the undergraduate program, for example, a lot of our growth is coming from North Texas. So we're based here. Our major footprint is in Norman. So we're about a 2.5-hour drive from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. That's the fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States. It's now the 4th largest. There's a lot of students that look to the north and say, look, I can get a fantastic education 2.5 hours north, which means I can be far enough away from my family, right? But I can also get home on the weekends to do my laundry and so on. So part of that is we've become increasingly attractive to the North Texas audience. And that, I think, is we're really seeing in the growth of our undergraduate program. Now, on the graduate side, a lot of the growth is really attributed to our growth in terms of the number of programs. So just in the time that I've been here, in the 3.5 years I've been sitting in the dean role, we've launched a hybrid executive MBA in aerospace and defense. We've launched our online MBA program. We've launched an online business analytics program and an online supply chain management program, all in the graduate space. So a lot of that new program development is driving growth as well. You mentioned that statistic that we've grown in total about 60% in the last decade. If you look at our graduate enrollment, we've grown more than 100% in that same time frame. And again, a lot of that is coming from program growth.
Right. So you expanded the portfolio of programs available to people.
And we'll continue to do so.
Yeah. And the other thing that's happening, of course, is many undergraduates are keenly interested in majoring in business. I understand that in terms of intent, 22% of the latest entering class of undergraduates at the university have basically declared business their preferred major, right?
Yeah, and that's up, that 22%, which is the freshman class that just joined us in August. If you go back just 6 or 7 years, around 16.5% of incoming freshmen said they wanted to major in business. So you're absolutely right. We're seeing, at least for Price College, and I talked to other deans at other universities around the country, there's also that similar trend that business is becoming a more popular major. I think there's a variety of reasons for that as well, one of which was a lot of these kids were shaped by their parents that came out of the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. So this idea of having a degree that's going to give them a secure job, I think, has really been ingrained with them as they've grown up.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There's a lot of this is parental involvement in helping kids choose a major that's going to get them a real job when they graduate. And they still have a liberal arts education. They can minor in other topics. And of course, when you major in business, it doesn't mean that every course you take is in business.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I'm glad you brought the point up at liberal arts. So one of the things that we've also been growing very, very aggressively is our minors, business minors.
Right.
And a big chunk of that growth is coming from outside the college. So students in liberal arts, for example, or fine arts, engineering, et cetera, coming to the business school and participating in one of our business minors, and more recently in some of our undergraduate certificate programs.
Right. Yeah, that's and currently what, 1 in 5 university students are now business majors?
It's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
How do you deal with growth like that, incidentally? I mean, it means you have to hire more faculty, more staff. You have to have more capacity in your buildings. What's going on those fronts to handle
the great question. So look, I would rather have the challenges or problem of growth than the other direction, which, as you know, some other universities around the country are experiencing, and I think that's just going to accelerate. So you're right, growth does present challenges, and it's really on the capacity side. So we've had to grow our faculty. The challenge for us is, can we grow our faculty, both our tenure track and our non-tenure track, or clinical faculty, at a rate that's actually faster than our enrollment growth? Because we want to make sure that that ratio between students and faculty members is sufficiently small that people have that intimate experience in the college. So yes, we've grown our faculty in the last few years at a rate that's actually exceeds the growth of our enrollment. Now, the question becomes, where do we put more students? Where do we put more faculty? And clearly, our staff grows as well as support for faculty and for students as that grows. So we are actually running into some major limitations of our physical footprint here on the Norman campus, as well as where our MBA program is up in Oklahoma City on our health sciences campus. And as a result of that, what we've done just this year is we've started what's called a master facility planning project. The whole idea behind that project is to really imagine what is the future of the college over at least the next decade in terms of enrollments, faculty and staff headcount, look at the space that we currently have, and then use those forecasts plus the space we have to basically better understand how much more space do we need. So we're about halfway through that planning project right now, and we have a clear idea that, no surprise, we need much more space. So this requires a conversation with the different stakeholders at the university level. Are we going to be able to grow physically? In what direction are we going to be able to grow, given where we are at the center of the Norman campus here? So it's something we're working on. It's a longer term project. Fundraising is going to play a major role in that. We're in the middle of the university, as well as the college, a major fundraising campaign. And a big chunk of that is going to be focused on support for our growth.
Right. Now, a big part of the value proposition here is that you are a part of a public university. And so you're offering quality education at affordable and accessible means, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a big deal too, because, you know, one of the problems with rankings, frankly, is that they award places that exclude people at the expense of inclusion. And one of the, I think, benefits of a public university like yours is that it's highly affordable, offering great quality, great value for the dollar, and far more accessible because you're about inclusion and affordability and not exclusivity and high prices. I mean, that's a core part of the value proposition. Now, there's a phrase that's used at your school, and I wonder if you could explain what it means. It's called future proven. What does it mean?
All right, so let me give you some context about Future Proven. So we engaged starting about a little over a year ago with a branding agency to help us better articulate our story. And the primary reason for that is there's some major headwinds in higher education these days. There's the coming demographic cliff that we're all aware of that's going to start to hit us in a couple of years. So we're going to see a decline in graduating seniors from high school. There's, as you pointed out, there are serious concerns amongst potential students and their families around affordability. Tuition and fees of U.S. universities have been on this upward spiral now for more than 2 decades. There's some concerns about the value of higher education, which I find a little bit odd because there's a lot of data that suggests that the value of degree is greater now than it ever has been before. But we have some serious headwinds. And what that meant for us is that we're going to have to be able to articulate our story, particularly, as you mentioned earlier, our value proposition. So this is why we went into this rebranding effort with our partner Ology, based out of Columbus, Ohio. And part of this effort was to say, well, what is the value proposition of Price College? Why should different stakeholders, including potential students, come here and engage with us? And where we arrived at was Future Proven. And Future Proven, so I'll get to your point now, in terms of what does it mean is I'm going to try to articulate it in 2 stories. So story number 1 is a story about the origin of the University of Oklahoma. So it's a famous story here on campus. Our very first president was a gentleman by the name of David Ross Boyd. He came to Norman, which is where the university is based, in 1892, before the state of Oklahoma was a state. And the story goes that when he stepped off the train in Norman, he looked around and all he saw was this giant swath of prairie land, a lot of scrub brush, a lot of tall grass. And rather than be dismayed and disenchanted and frustrated, he said, "What possibilities?" In other words, he didn't see prairie land, he didn't see scrub brush. He saw a future that could create tremendous possibilities for the people of Oklahoma, the people of the region. That idea of looking at the existing situation, and rather than looking at it in terms of what it is, and it's instead of doing that, it's looking at it what it could be. Yes. That's part of what future proven means, right? Because one of the things we know about business is that it's always changing. Now, it seems to be changing faster than ever these days, whether we're talking about ChatGPT or other technological changes or social changes that we're seeing as well. There's this fantastic amount of change. And I think for a lot of students, and even for faculty in business schools, that change can be a little bit overwhelming, and you can start to see the challenges rather than the possibilities. So part of Future Proven is the ability to look into the future and be able to see and understand what the possibilities are. So that's story number 1. Story number 2 is this happened to me this week. So I was at lunch with the CFO of one of the largest privately held firms in the country that probably most people aren't aware of. It's called Love's Travel Stops. They're based in Oklahoma City, which is just 30 miles north of Norman. They're one of our largest recruiters from Price College. And the CFO and I were having lunch, and he said to me about midway through lunch, he said, "Corey, I love to hire Price College students." So of course, I asked why, and he said, "Well, for the following reasons. They're extremely hardworking. They're extremely high-powered. In other words, they're highly capable. They have that foundational knowledge, business acumen toolkit. So they're extremely high-powered, but they're also extremely hungry, and they're very humble." So for me, Future Proven is really those 2 things. It's having that strong foundational capability. It's having that hardworking, just put your head down, work hard, but it also is that curiosity to imagine different possibilities, because that's what the future is going to require. So a lot of people talk about being future proof. Personally, I don't believe anybody is future proof. That sort of, to me, implies that you've got all the knowledge and capabilities and you're going to be able to win out in the long run, despite the way the world is going to change. For me, future proven is, do you have that core foundational capabilities, set of capabilities you can build on? And then do you have that resilience, adaptability, and curiosity that's going to allow you to navigate a future that's clearly going to be different from the present. So it's really the combination of those two things that for us is what it means to be future proven.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. And I wonder, just to dive a little bit deeper on this issue, what you think you're doing in providing the skills, the tools, the training for young people to make sure that they're not replaced by an algorithm.
Yeah, that's been the topic of conversations for about the last year, right? With Chat GPT. So I think there's a few things that are involved here. Number one, there's the curriculum. In other words, there are the courses and the subject matter that's taught. So we are constantly reevaluating that curriculum. So we have 6 academic divisions. Each division is responsible for a set of core courses in both our undergraduate program and our graduate programs. And there's this ongoing conversation that we have, not just internally, but with our industry partners, with our recruiters, about, do the students have the requisite skills to be ready day one for the job? What that means for us is we're constantly reevaluating our curriculum. Now, generative AI is something that is the topic du jour right now.
Yes.
We've been focusing, for example, on artificial intelligence and machine learning, largely in our MIS division, Management Information Systems division. But now we're starting to see this focus on generative AI really across all of our courses. So we have faculty members that are experimenting with the use of Chat GPT, whether it's in finance, accounting, marketing, supply chain, strategy, and so on. So part of the answer is, do we have a curriculum that is up to date and relevant to employers that are recruiting our students? Another thing that we're focused on is, are we making sure that students have sufficient opportunities to apply what they're learning in the classroom in real time? So this idea of experiential learning, which we talk a lot about, especially in business education, which is critical, and it's particularly critical for us. We want to make sure that we're really closing the gap between the conceptual, theoretical material they're learning and the application of it. And we do this in a variety of ways, whether it's project-based work that students are working on with a lot of our industry partners, whether it's participating in case competitions, whether it's participating in complex simulations, being exposed to guest speakers. So a variety of focus on experiential learning opportunities as well. And then there's some unique experiences that we're trying to provide students. And I'll mention a few things in this vein. So part of Price College is a center called the Ronnie K. Arani Center for the Creation of Economic Wealth. I know it's a really long name, which is why we just use the acronym ICCW. What that organization does is they recruit students, really some of the best and brightest students across the university every semester. About a third of them come from Price College, another third come from our College of Engineering, and another third come from really all of campus, including our health sciences colleges like medicine and nursing. So these students are put into a very intensive training boot camp on fundamental skills of really innovation consulting. And then they're matched with clients, mostly startups, but also a lot of companies, established companies that have growth projects, to work on a semester-long consulting project. It's really our platform that we have to get our students jobs in the big strategy consulting firms, the MBBs, McKinsey, Bain, BCG. But it's I don't know of any other business school that has at any point in time, a 400-person innovation consulting organization that is working across the state and as well as for us in North Texas. So that's an experience that we provide students. An additional experience is we have a strength and a passion for entrepreneurship in Price College. In fact, our entrepreneurship programs, undergraduate, graduate, are some of our highest ranked programs. We have a facility, Tom Love Innovation Hub. I remember I just mentioned the Loves Company earlier. Tom was the founder of Loves along with his wife, and Tom helped us create the Tom Love Innovation Hub, which is a 20,000 square foot facility that's about a mile and a half down the road from us here on the Norman campus. In that facility, we have an 8,000 square foot, they're often called maker spaces. We call it a fab lab. But what that fab lab does, it has pretty much any machine tool, three-dimensional printer, high pressure water cutter, you name it. It allows startup companies, entrepreneurs, from, again, across the state. They don't have to be OU. They don't have to be students, faculty, or staff, to prototype products. And we have students, Price College students and students from other colleges that work under the supervision of highly accomplished machinists. So if you want to take an idea from your head and convert it into a physical product, you can do so in the Fab Lab, and our students have the experience to work with that. We also run entrepreneurship programs there as well, non-curricular programs. We have a startup accelerator, as well as a startup incubator. A lot of those are student-based companies. Many of them come out of Price College. So again, we're always looking for opportunities to really do two things, because you mentioned it earlier. We are the flagship public research university of the state of Oklahoma. That means we have an obligation to the state to help the state from an economic growth standpoint. So the iHub works with entrepreneurs from around the state. So we're trying to do our part when it comes to economic development and growth for the state. But while doing so, we're trying to provide really valuable experiences for our students to learn. So again, I could go on about other experiential learning programs that we have, but that's something that we're constantly trying to do to close the gap between that classroom-based learning and the ability to apply it, because we want those students to be ready day one when they graduate to contribute to whoever employer has hired them.
Yep, and that's what employers want. So you're serving it up. The other thing, of course, that an algorithm will never be able to do is to lead others effectively and in a meaningful collaboration. I wonder what you're doing with your students to make them better leaders.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to how you think about leadership, right? So we know that leaders need to have that sort of basic business acumen. And I think that's what a good business degree gives you, regardless of the major. We also know that there are a set of soft skills that leaders need to have. I would say one of the leading ones is problem solving, critical thinking. And then finally, I think the thing that we most associate with leadership is really the ability to motivate, inspire others to achieve a common goal. So, if we sort of think about it from that perspective, clearly our majors are really about building those basic business acumen skills. Much of what we do, like I would say most other leading business schools, is we do these in group settings because we're really trying to develop that skill set for students about collaboration, because again, that's what leaders do, is leaders are able to mobilize groups of individuals, collaborate to achieve a goal. So a big part of what we do is group-based work. I also mentioned the experiential learning opportunities. Much of that is done in a group-based setting. The ability to inspire and motivate others. There are different leadership programs at the University of Oklahoma, but I'm going to mention one that we have. It's sort of our crown jewel of a leadership program. It's the JCPenney Leadership Program. It's a purely extracurricular program. So these are students that are recruited. They are evaluated by current students, current fellows of the JCPenney Leadership Program, and they're selected by those students as well. And what this program is really focused on is really providing a wide variety of opportunities for students to be placed in leadership roles, but also be able to learn from established leaders from across sectors. So not just for-profit, nonprofit, government as well. So this is a program that's really trying to, again, help build those leadership skills in students in a way that sort of goes beyond the basic business acumen, those team leadership skills, the problem-solving skills have. It's very much focused on what is the core job of a leader when it comes to being able to develop a common goal and direction, and then be able to motivate and inspire others to achieve that.
Right. All makes sense. And now, Corey, I know that when you joined the Price College back in July of 2020, you initiated a strategic planning process and you engaged over 600 stakeholders. What was the outcome of that process? What did you learn that you may not have known before you started it?
Well, that's a great question. So again, I want to back up and give a bit of context. So you mentioned July 2020. We all remember what July 2020 was like.
Yes.
It was the peak
Tough
of
time
COVID.
to start a new job.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time to start a new job, not knowing anybody in the university, in the state, because as you mentioned, I was at McGill in Montreal before this. But look, you never want to miss an opportunity to take advantage of a crisis. And I think that's
Sure.
really what COVID
Yeah,
presented us
very
was an
true.
opportunity. And the reason I say that is because for us, and I think for pretty much most people around the world, in those days, it was all COVID all the time. And my concern as a new leader inside Price College was if we are consumed by the day to day, we're not going to be thinking about the future. Right. And to your point, we needed to think about the future for a few reasons. Number one, there hadn't been a new strategic plan. There hadn't been a strategic planning exercise done in the college for over a decade. That's point one. Point two is, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of changes that are happening in higher education, right? Those dark clouds on the horizon. And when I thought about those two things, I thought about, well, we need to prepare for this. So let's take advantage of this crisis and let's start to think about the future, because we will come out of COVID and we will need to have a clear strategic direction. Those were largely motivators, but I would say one of the biggest motivators for launching the strategic planning exercise is every time I met a new person, almost without fail, the question I got was some variation of, so Corey, what's the future of Price College? And being a new leader, a new dean, knowing very little really about the university and the college, I didn't have a good answer for that. Now, the best way to get an answer for that is to engage in a very deep dive, broadly inclusive strategic planning process. So as you mentioned, we kicked off this in early 2021. It was an open strategic planning exercise. In other words, we engaged, as you mentioned, over 600 different stakeholders, alumni, board of advisory members, faculty, staff, other key players at the university, students. And what I learned about that was it really allowed me to deeply understand a variety of aspects of Price College. I got to know sort of the history of the university, the history of the college. I got to better understand our students. I got to better understand our faculty and staff. In other words, I really got to better understand what our strengths were as a college. I got to better understand really where the limitations, the challenges, the weaknesses, if you were, both within the college and the university. A big part of this exercise was external future focus. So think about identifying opportunities and threats. So it was a fantastic learning experience for me as a new leader, because in a relatively compressed amount of time, about 9 months, I learned a tremendous amount about not just the internal context of Price and OU, but really sort of the competitive landscape that the college and the university operates in. And I don't think I could be as effective as a leader as I am today without having had really that intensive learning journey.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And although I will say, having to address the immediate crisis of COVID and the pandemic and its effect on higher education, and then taking on this massive project was daunting, no less, right?
It was a challenge. There were definitely very, very long days. And I live up in Oklahoma City, which is about a 30-mile commute from here on the Norman campus. And most of my commuting time was really engaged with thinking about what was happening and what I was learning. But like I said, it was an extremely valuable learning opportunity for me. I think the product of that has been great. We have a strategic plan, a very clear direction. I'm a huge fan of alliteration, as my team at Price College knows. So the title of our plan really captures the direction of the college, which is bigger, broader, and better. And that's really the future for Price College at sort of the high level, where the rubber meets the road in any strategic plan or those initiatives that you're spending time, effort, and allocating resources to. We have 71 of those initiatives, right? We've prioritized them over the 5 years, but it gives us a very clear direction of where we're going. We use a strategic execution software platform to track our progress. That progress is visible to our stakeholders, so it's a way to hold us accountable for executing on the strategic plan, because as you know, John, a lot of strategic plans are nice, glossy brochures that sit on a shelf and they're never implemented. So we wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. So I think the process for me was extremely valuable from a learning standpoint as a leader, and I'm very pleased with the outcome of it. And I'm also pleased, as you mentioned at the top, of the progress that we've made on executing on the plan.
Yes. Now, it should be clear to everyone too that given your location, you can play an important role in energy transition. And I wonder what you're doing in that area, because of course that is a core industry in both Texas and Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
And a core concern. Yeah.
Well, in many ways, the history of OU is the history of energy. I mean, many people will call us an energy university. So you're absolutely right. We have a deep history in energy. So does Price College. In fact, Price College has the oldest, what used to be called petroleum land management program. So petroleum land managers are a particular function within energy companies. These are the individuals that go out and negotiate rights to land for exploratory production wells, as well as rights of way for pipelines and things like that. Over time, those programs have morphed into what we now call an energy management program, because it's the skill set that we're developing in our students is beyond just petroleum land management. It's really sort of the commercial negotiation skills. Now, as the name of that program implies, was very much focused on oil and gas. Well, Oklahoma has been historically an oil and gas state, but we're also a renewable state, right? There is a tremendous amount of wind in Oklahoma. There's a reason that the movie Twister was filmed in Oklahoma, because we've got a lot of wind that produces tornadoes. There's a tremendous amount of sun in Oklahoma. So whether it's wind power or solar power, the state's going to be a big player in energy, in particularly renewable energy. So what we've done very recently with our undergraduate energy management program is we've developed a new track on renewable energy management. So really the innovation for us there isn't just the fact that we're focusing on oil and gas and now renewables. That renewable energy track, which we've created a certificate for, is available to all OU undergraduate students. So if you are a petroleum engineer in our College of Earth and Energy, or if you're a chemical engineer, or if you're a physicist and you want to know and learn about renewable energy, you can come to Price College. So we've done that on the curriculum side. The director of that program has done a heroic job of going out and recruiting industry partners in the renewable energy space to ensure that the students coming out of that program now have access to internships and jobs in renewable energy. So we've made a big push in renewables at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, we've done something similar. We have an executive MBA program in energy. It was our first executive MBA. It was actually the university's first online program. It's about 9 years old now. That program was also historically focused on oil and gas. 2 years ago, we created a renewable energy track in that program. And now what we have is we have a trunk and branch approach to that program. The students in the program take a common core, and then they can choose to specialize in oil and gas, or they can choose to specialize in renewable energy. And what's great about that program is when you see people coming from these two different sectors of energy, renewables and oil and gas, when they actually start to have conversations and they start to understand not sort of necessarily the substitutive nature, the competitive nature of those two energy sources, but how they can actually complement one another. So we've been making a big push into making sure that, again, consistent with this theme of having relevant programs, that in the energy space, we're focusing on what is this coming transition by adding on a strong focus on renewable energy.
Yeah, that's great. And you've also launched a new capital campaign. I guess it's called The Next 100 Years Are Calling. And I wonder how much money you're trying to raise and what you intend to do with it.
Okay, so the university has its campaign, which is called Lead On. The target there is a $2 billion goal. Our campaign, which, as you mentioned, is Next 100 Years, we're 10% of that goal. We're $200 million at a minimum. Now, I say at a minimum because As I mentioned earlier, we have this master facility planning project. We don't yet know what remodel and expansion is going to be in terms of dollar cost. So that's why it's a $200 million. It could very well go up. That $200 million is really largely designed to fund much of our strategic plan. So part of our strategic plan, those 71 initiatives that I mentioned, part of them we can fund with existing revenue sources from programs, but a large part of that is going to have to come from philanthropy. So for example, you mentioned earlier the fact that we're growing and we have to grow faculty. So one way that we can attract top faculty, especially at the mid-career and senior level, is through the creation of professorships and endowed chairs. So a big chunk of money that we're trying to raise is to create 8 endowed chairs and at least 8 professorships. We're also creating new centers. We're making a big push into real estate finance. We're making a big push into the business of healthcare. Our goal is to have centers for both of those. I mentioned experiential learning. You mentioned accessibility. So for us, that means scholarships to make sure that our students can afford to come to Price College. So there's a variety of needs that we have from a financial standpoint that our fundraising campaign is designed to address. Where we are right now is, as of last week, we were at the $78 million mark towards that $200 million goal. We've got about 4 years left in the time horizon of the campaign. So far, we're on track to hit that $200 million goal and hopefully more, because I think we're going to need more based upon what comes about in terms of our expansion efforts.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on and a lot to fund and a great future ahead. The namesake of your college, of course, died last year. I knew him. And yes, he was a very interesting value investor, of course, and very well known in that circle. And I wonder, in terms of investment, what kinds of things you may do in value investing, or if you do anything in value investing.
Yeah, so Michael's very first gift to us was to create a student investment fund and to focus on using the principles of value investing to make trades in that fund. So that fund now is, it's almost 30 years old. It has increased substantially since the initial gift, but that was Michael's initial gift. And being a true value investor, Michael would often like to say, I want to see a return before I decide to invest more. So that initial gift back, I think it was 1994, then actually became a much larger set of gifts that he gave to create the Price College, to be named after him, and then eventually the lead gift to create Price Hall, which is actually where we're recording this video right now. So yeah, Michael was a tremendous value investor. He was a tremendous champion of Price College and of the university. He was a tremendous loss, but what I like to say is his legacy is going to live on in perpetuity because of the gifts that he's given us.
That's really true. So Corey, it seems like you've already expanded the portfolio of programs. You're launching a capital campaign that will help to fund additional capacity at the school. And I'm thinking that, if anything, your undergraduate program probably will increase in enrollment given the intention of incoming freshmen at the university. And that's probably one of the more immediate concerns. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
terrific.
Yeah, the undergraduate, I'll say this about the undergraduate program enrollment growth. We talked a little about what's driving that. I think there's something that's going to also positively impact that growth as we move forward. So OU is a football crazy university, and rightfully so. As many people know, we are going to be moving from the Big 12 conference next year to the SEC. As a result of moving to the SEC, there's going to be a lot more eyeballs around the country on the University of Oklahoma. And as a result of that, we think that that's going to contribute to this continued uptick in undergraduate enrollment and then potentially even graduate enrollment. So I know that there are a lot of people around the university that are looking at this solely from the perspective of sports, but I also think it's going to impact us in terms of enrollment growth as well.
Indeed. Well, here's to the future. Corey, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. School is in really good hands, and it sounds like you're on a real great growth trajectory that will continue. And with more funding, you'll have greater momentum.
That's right. Well, John, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to you today.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We've been speaking to Corey Phelps, the Dean of the Michael F. Price College of Business at the University of Oklahoma. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. And if so, check out their website. There's tons of information on all the different programs that they offer. And I bet you there's some tidbits on the strategic plan that you put in place as a result of that pretty elaborate planning process. All right, this is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for joining us.